You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans that just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and nonsense. We are talking about the top topics around the Pack every week, going through, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the draft and all the rumors of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, head on over to the Packers Talk YouTube channel right now. Hit that pause button, step away. You won't miss anything within the next minute or so. Come on back. You got to subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. That would help us immensely. We would greatly appreciate it. And we dearly love all of you listeners and subscribers that join us every week. Y'all hop in the comments, have some fun with us. We're going to have some fun topics to talk about tonight. We're going to break down the 2024 season a little bit, and we're going to tell you what was missing. You know, what was missing the most. I think we've all had our opinions throughout the season, maybe based on how we felt after each game. But, you know, looking at it from a little bit more of a macro perspective, what do we think? But first, before we get started, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Tim, good evening, sir. How we doing? You staying warm up there in PA?
No, I am not staying warm in Pennsylvania, Miles.
I got the headgear on right now, man. It's cold down here.
You might need to send that up here because, you know, we may hit 20 degrees tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm freezing. I had a little bit of snow. I think everybody that watched the Eagles-Rams game on Sunday saw the snow. And during that game, that's what we got here. I'm not too far from Philadelphia. So, no, it's not my kind of weather. So, I'm ready for springtime. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm cold, you know, hanging in there. Life comes at us fast sometimes, but you got to just roll with it and go with it. And so that's what I'm here doing, man. But we got to figure out what's going on with the Packers now. We've had some time to let the emotions maybe settle a little bit. We've had some time to, you know, see some other teams play a little bit more. And sometimes that is medicine in itself. We can maybe talk a little bit about that. Sure. But yeah, you know, I think it's a good time to look back and go, all right, what's the thing, right? There had to have been just like a thing that is the thing from 2024 that we can just pin down because everything is that simple in life, right?
I mean, yeah, I wish it was all that simple.
Well, it is that simple. We're gonna make it, man, because we said so. But yeah, you know, I think there's been a lot of opinions throughout the season, and there's been some fair rebuttals. You know, I myself have gotten out there at times feeling like the Jon Snow meme, you know, drawing his sword with the horses coming at him. Being the optimistic Packer fan, or, you know, when everybody says we don't have a pass rush, and be like, well, you know, you're 7th in the league in sacks. That is a pass rush. It's not a pass rush. But at the end of the day, what was it, man? Like, what was the thing that just kept this team from playing one more week or one more week after that or one more week after that? And, you know, I mean, what take us away here, Tim? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word that I used a ton this year was consistency. There was just a lack of overall consistency in the entire team, but to me, specifically in the passing offense, week to week, within a game, even the games where they won going away, you know, double-digit victories, blowouts, there was still always kind of like that lull in the middle of a game where they would go like 3 or 4 drives and they couldn't pick up a first down. And it was like, what's missing? Like, why can't they just click? And they never really, truly, fully did in the passing game. So, I mean, that stood out all season. And I think having watched some other games, you know, wild card round, divisional round, you see kind of like the difference between what the Packers were and what these remaining teams are. And I think there's two things that have stood out through these games. It's one, it's the pass rush that you talked about. They didn't have that enough this year. There were the games against Seattle and Tennessee where they piled up the sacks. I think they had 15 sacks between those two games.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But then there were way too many games against Detroit, Minnesota, Philadelphia where they couldn't breathe on the quarterback. And you're seeing the pass rush change games. I mean, the Eagles won a game yesterday because the Lions couldn't block their guys up front, and they just wreaked havoc. And you're seeing it in key spots. Some pressure from the Commanders caused Jared Goff to fumble a ball, caused them to throw interceptions. The pass rush is so key defensively. And the other thing is turnover battle. I know it's cliche and it's coach speak, but
oh man, I think that stood out way more this season than most.
It's incredible. When you get to the playoffs, the turnover battle is everything, and it's crazy. You get the stupid box score stats, which you can't just look at the box score, but the 4 teams that had the most yardage in the games in the divisional round were the 4 teams who actually lost. They outgained the team that beat them. The difference was turnovers. They were all killed by turnovers.
Big time.
And that was something that when the Packers got into games against Detroit, Minnesota, Philadelphia, the turnovers killed them, among other things. But those are the kind of things that stood out. And I feel like stepping back from it now that we're, a week, 8 days since the Packers loss and, able to see these other teams play and see who the final 4 teams are and how they have advanced and what their seasons were like. I think overall with the Packers, I don't think they're far off from being a contender. I certainly don't think they're far off in their division. And that was a season where the division was historically good. You had a 15-win Lion team and a 14-win Viking team. I don't think they're far off from those teams. But what I keep coming back to is they have to get to the level of these teams that, in their final 4. And I think it's a mentality thing and it's a consistency thing. And we talked all year about they couldn't beat the Lions, the Vikings, the Eagles. Those were the big games. But I think the problems were throughout the season. It wasn't just in those quote unquote big games. It was, you needed to build your team throughout the season so that when you got to those big games, the recurring issues, the slow starts, the turnovers, the key penalties, those things weren't who you were. They didn't build their identity. They didn't show that they were that team capable of beating the better teams because they didn't establish that throughout the season. You need to be that team going into that game. And I felt like there was too many of those situations where it was okay, they're playing the Lions, they're playing the Vikings, they're playing the Eagles in the playoffs. If they do all this stuff and we forget about what they did in the past, then they can maybe pull this one out. But it's you need to be going into that game being okay, they're a pretty good team. Let's see what happens. They're on that level. And they just never got to that level. And I think those recurring mistakes that they had, the continual beating themselves that we saw all season, that was still happening in some of these other games where they were beating bad teams or mediocre teams, but they were able to overcome it because they were just the better team. They were just
right.
They were just
more talented.
But all those habits were building so that when they got into these games against better teams, the better teams exposed their weaknesses, and all these flaws and all these mistakes would just continue to show up. And they need to start. Every week needs to be an important game to them. And I'm not saying it wasn't, but you build your team, you eliminate all these other issues, these mistakes that you make, so that when you get into the bigger games, you're ready to go and you're not already behind because you have to overcome so many of your own flaws to beat the Lions or the Vikings or the Eagles. And it was you don't see the teams that are left right now, the final 4 teams, they're not beating themselves. They're not making those mistakes. And that's not a recent thing. That's been an off-season thing for those teams, right? None of them are perfect. None of them are unbeatable teams, but they're this far because they've been able to find ways to win games and find ways to just not lose games. And that's important, right? You can't lose the game. And I mean, one of the teams you see the Eagles that they're one of the final 4 teams, and I'm picking on them because that's who eliminated us. But their defense is really good. They have a very good pass rush. But their offense is basically Saquon Barkley makes a big run or they don't do anything. And that's what we've seen through 2 playoff games. They're getting next to nothing out of Jalen Hurts in the passing game. But he makes 2 big plays. They have a dominant offensive line. They're not turning the ball over. And their defense has forced turnovers. They've gotten pressure. And that's why they're playing for the NFC Championship game at home. So, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you got to blow every team out in the playoffs. You just got to find a way to win, to not beat yourself, and to not have, to overcome the flaws that you do have, because every team does have flaws. Even these Final Four, like they all have flaws, but they're able to overcome that because they don't do enough to shoot themselves in the foot like the Packers did continually. And they're able to find ways to win. And that's something the Packers got to learn. It's a lesson that hopefully they are able to take, coaching staff and players from the season, and they can take it into next year and build on that. Or else the 2024 season was a complete waste if they can't figure out answers to the problems they had.
Well, it may sound like a cliche, but honestly, that type of mentality has to start now. You have to start building that in the offseason, because it's not something you just flip on. It has to be something that's like built-in habit, and I've seen teams like that, right? I've seen teams that win national championships and stuff like that. They're perfect. And they're perfect. And it sounds like the cliche from Friday Night Lights, but they don't make mistakes. But that's something that gets drilled almost like the military into these programs. And it happens in the off season. It doesn't just happen in practice that week. You know what I mean? It's something that LaFleur has to start now. And based on that press conference from Goody, I mean, he said it. The urgency has to go up. He's technically LaFleur's boss, isn't he? Or is that still like a half and half thing?
Well, I mean, he's reporting to Mark. They each report
to the president.
So
okay, yeah. So,
but
new boss in town, man. You might have to like reapprove yourself. Obviously he's been around, but no. Point being is the expectation from Goody is clear, and he's the one putting the players on the field. So that guy's not looking at himself going, I should have done this, I should have done that. He's going, I see a lot of talent out there. We're not playing this week, So I do feel like the level of accountability is going up. Does that mean LaFleur's on the hot seat? No. So let's not get all weird and confused about that. But yeah, I think that the expectation changes. And I think that it really does need to be a little bit more of an intense expectation carried throughout the offseason, throughout your film, and all the stuff, the weight room sessions, all the stuff, everything that happens between now and the next regular season kickoff. That's where those expectations have to get set in and become muscle memory. That's where the holding calls get reduced. That's where, the flags in general get reduced. So I would really like to see that, and totally agree with you that that's an issue. And that's really we'll get into, what the difference is and how close are the Packers after this season, but not quite yet. Quick shout out to some of our friends here. Matthew Tan jumping in. Hi guys, from you and Carly. Love to see you guys with us. Thank you for joining us again. Y'all stay warm up there in GB. It's getting cold. Also, what's up, Daryl? Good to see you, sir. Glad you're with us this evening. Having some fun. We're gonna have some fun tonight with these topics, but you guys jump in. You guys usually get it going. I see go Ohio State. Ohio State is definitely winning that national championship right now, so that's not even very entertaining. Anyway, okay, back to the Packers. So what was missing the most from 2024? For me, I can't really disagree with the things that you said, Tim, but I'm going to say something that maybe, throws a curve into things. I think the Packers were missing a game manager. And maybe I didn't say that loud. They were missing a game manager, a bus driver. And I know it. There's some alarms going off. Like, God, wait, isn't that like an insult to a QB? You need a guy in this offense who can manage a game. Now, that's not what Jordan Love should be limited to. I think that there's maybe a backwards development with Jordan Love here. Maybe they focused less on the game manager side of developing him and more on the can you make this throw, can you make that throw side of this offense. I mean, clearly they were trying to flex that with some of the throws they're making, the hero ball down the field and all that. I want more of a game manager from Jordan Love. I really do. And I don't want, again, let me reiterate, I don't want him to be limited to being a game manager, but I want him to have that ability as a foundation to just be that dude that's not necessarily stepping back into what Rodgers was doing, but maybe like 25% into that, right? Where he can look at a situation and go, I hear you, coach. I know what you're calling here, but I'm telling you what I'm seeing. We need to do this and be able to do that confidently. And that takes two things, right? Like you have to know your stuff, right? You got to be on your film. You better be sharp. Football IQ has to be high. The other thing is you have to, you got to have the spine to be able to tell coach, I'm going to do this instead. And some guys, that's a lot tougher than for others. Some guys have zero issue with that. But for other guys, that's not an easy thing, Yeah, as we've seen. So I think that they missed that sorely in this 2024 season.
How about like just a situational awareness? Not saying he doesn't. I think that might be harsh. I'm not saying he doesn't know situational awareness, but there's just times where the easy completion, you just got to take it, right? Like. If it's
that's
sometimes
kind of what I mean by a game manager is being able to have the wherewithal to say like, not that one, this one, just take it, do it, live, and call the next one.
Sometimes you take the shorter throws if it's there and the ones that are deeper aren't. Just take it and see what can happen after your receiver catches the ball. Exactly. Right? Like don't force it downfield. Use your legs. Like I know early in the year he was injured, so that kind of came out of the offense. But for some reason later in the year, I'm not sure maybe it was still a lingering knee issue. I don't know, but I don't want him to turn into a running quarterback. Like they don't need to be running power runs like with Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson with it. But they still run RPOs and he'll still carry out the fake, but he never keeps it anymore. And we saw that at times in 2023. And he made some play. He made a big play against the Lions on Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. A huge run in that game to basically close out that game. Like you can keep the ball. Or you can scramble and try to get away from pressure instead of forcing a throw. I think they went away a lot of times from their bootlegs. Maybe they weren't working as good as 2023. Okay, but it just seemed like some of that, the element of using his legs went away. And some of the easy throws, just like get him, we've talked about it all season. Was just get him some easy throws early in the game and get him in the rhythm and feeling comfortable. And it's not protecting him or managing the game, but like some quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, you need to get them in the flow of the game and manage it. I mean, Mike Holmgren did it with Brett Favre for years. Like
it's a good foundation to be able to start with so that you can turn it loose thoughtfully, right? Yeah. Like not that you don't have the ability to turn it loose or not that we don't trust you to turn it loose. It's just sometimes it's not the right thing to do, and I've been, as we've watched this next round of playoffs, the divisional round, I'm thinking to myself, the teams that are able to just get something going, get a pass here, get a pass there, hit a run, just get the nickel and dime down the field, man. Sometimes that is the most effective drive. And you saw it with the Rams, what they were trying to do. I mean, when they were able to focus, and then obviously with the snow and everything, when they were able to focus and actually things were on the line, they started moving down the field, and Stafford definitely has the game manager's, foundation. He's certainly not a game manager. He's got a big arm and, still a great mind, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, still. But yeah, I think Jordan Love now is at this point where he's kind of coming out of the baby deer phase, right? Like he should know how to use his legs now, and not, figuratively, but also physically this next year, come out healthy. That was probably part of it, right? You limit the guy on what he can do with his legs because you want to protect his legs. But yeah, I think that you need that. You need that foundation for Jordan Love now. You need to not turn him into a game manager this offseason, but he needs to have that skill in his belt. He needs to have the ability to sit there and understand the game plan and what is going to work against what is being put in front of him. And enough of this whole, well, we got more man than we expected. Like, good Lord, man, what a lame thing to say. I know I've said that over and over again. It's just like, it's so lame. Like, what? What is this? You know, like you got more, like, goodness gracious, that's like backyard football. It's like the basic thing. And you should, okay, we got man. Let's use this thing to beat man. That's a very common thing. Anyway, stop ranting. So, yeah, I think that they need to be able to mature beyond that. And I really do think it takes Jordan Love to do that. I don't think that we can sit here and wish and hope for and expect the perfect offensive coordinator, or that, whatever's going on with LaFleur and whether he is playing or calling plays or designing the offense or not. Like, just the inconsistency with the scheme of the offense for me is kind of frustrating. And again, Jordan Love has the ability to stabilize that. And that's what I would really, really like to see. I think it was sorely missing from this team in 2024. If he had that element in his game in 2024, I think it would have gone very different. I'm not saying you go to the Super Bowl, but I think you probably can beat that Eagles team in that game where their offense was struggling. And your defense was playing really well. If you can just game manage down the field, get a couple gutted out drives where you were just heaving and hoeing and coming up short and throwing these, weird shots downfield and making bad decisions with interceptions, just get these high percentage plays in there. And the season, maybe goes one more week. I'm not saying you're going to the Super Bowl or anything, but I think you go at least one more week in this season if Jordan Love has that in his game. And we didn't see it. So that was kind of disappointing. But you hit the nail on the head, Tim. They've got to stop with the mistakes and beating themselves. I think that is just one of the characteristics of a championship team that can't be denied, is that they don't beat themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're saying about taking that next step is like your game and situational awareness, being game manager. Like, that's something you can learn as a young quarterback, and it takes them time. Like, look at Josh Allen. Like, he was a wild dude, like all over the place. But he's learned over time as a starter what he can and can't get away with. And yeah, he can be Superman and he'll go out there and run dudes over and he'll throw bombs, but he'll check it down to Shakir and, 5 yards, let him do the work after the catch. Like, he knows the situations and what he can get away with. Same with Patrick.
What you need, right? Like, if you can just get 5 yards, take 5 yards. That's not a loss. Like, singles all day in baseball, right?
Right. I mean, how many bombs did we see Tom Brady over the second half of his career throw? Not that many. He was, he had Gronk, he had Edelman. Throw it to those guys. Like, how many short passes did Julian Edelman catch and turn in the first downs? And you go down the field and you score. Like, you have to know the game that you're in and the situations that you're in. And I think that's just something that more reps, more experience as a starter, it's something that Jordan Love can grow with. Like, it doesn't happen right away for these guys. They all have to learn it. And, they didn't have that in 2024. Jordan needs to get better at that, but that's the key here. Like, he's 2 years in as a starter. There's still a lot of growth left there, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the things that he can definitely get better at and learn from. And I'm confident that he will. It's just that, hey, like, I know what I can do. I know what the play call is, but it's not there. So I'm going to do this instead. Like, I'm not going to force things. And I'm not going to, not that he always panicked, but sometimes there's just throws like you don't need to make that. Like, just take the underneath stuff. Like, if it's there, it's there. Even if it's not getting you to the sticks or it's not a big play down the field, just take it and see what it gets you and live to fight another down. Put your team in a better situation than forcing a throw that may be intercepted or thrown an incompletion. Or so, yeah, it's stuff that he can definitely get better at. And I'm confident he will. He's still a young starting quarterback in this league.
Absolutely. No, that's the part where it's not necessarily a thing that we've got to be frustrated about or upset about. I think it's really just a natural progression of being in the league, and every season is unique. The coaching is unique. The challenges are unique. Obviously this year Jordan Love had injuries to deal with. All of that, I guess, in the season can sound like excuses, so people try to avoid it. It doesn't really need to be excuses. It just needs to be acknowledgement that those things change things, right? Like you go into the season with expectations, and then the season doesn't turn out the way you expected, but these things happened, and those things change how a season goes. So that's where I'm looking forward to another offseason for Jordan Love. Take that step forward, develop. I think he's in a great position to do that. Obviously, it stinks to see Tom Clements go, but I do think that they've got some bodies in the building already that might be ready to step up. And that's a position that I do trust Matt LaFleur to fill responsibly. I think that he knows how important that is at this point. I think he's seen the contrast of that. And not that I would say that he's filled other positions irresponsibly. I just know that some of us have been less than thrilled with the nepotism that happens there. And I would love to see an offensive coordinator come in that can, really contribute something to this. Maybe not create some kind of arm wrestling match between him and LaFleur, but I would like somebody that's got some skins on the wall. So that's just my own opinion, but it's going to be an interesting offseason. And I think at this point, Jordan Love is mature enough that he's probably going to get better just despite whoever his QB coach is at this point. He's a sharp dude. He probably understands better than anybody exactly what he needs to improve on and probably the path to do it. So I get a lot of confidence in that. And I look forward to seeing what that yields. But you need that, man. You need the game manager aspect from your quarterback because there are times where that is exactly what is called for. It's not all the time. It's not what you should be limited to. I'm sure there's going to be a few you little trolls that take this out of context as, Miles wants a game manager.
No.
But yeah, I mean, you understand what I'm saying, Tim, is you got to have that guy. He's a general on the field. He's like a coach on the field, a brain on the field, somebody who can help you understand how to win with the, direct circumstances in front of you. So that was my biggest thing missing from 2024. When you look at some of the other things, and we talked a little bit about the turnovers, but the other things that seem to be working in the playoffs right now, one thing that is just true as time goes on is a great defense, right? The teams that are winning right now are winning with great defense, and the Packers did have a good defense this year, borderline great. The pass rush was probably a difference, right? You had a decent pass rush sometimes, but consistency, you got to have a good pass rush all the time. And I think that there's probably some things that Hafley will learn about himself when he goes back and he analyzes the whole of the season. But I really do look forward to seeing, the steps forward that they can take next season from this stuff, because there's a lot to build with. There may have been a moment there where everybody felt like pushing the burn it down button, because it does feel really good to push that button, especially when you're all emotional. But you walk back and you're like, dang, the foundation of this team is strong. It really is. And you don't hear anybody backing away from that. You don't hear a Josh Jacobs going, well, this isn't what I came here for, and sometimes I've heard that attitude from free agents, and what he said is, I'm going to bring more people here, right? I'm going to do everything I can to get people here. And I think Xavier McKinney feels the same way. So, you've got guys there that are great building blocks on both sides of the ball. They love what they came into. They don't feel regret about it. And then you look around the roster and you just don't have a whole lot of talent holes. There were certainly some unfortunate things that happened. There's definitely some positions that could use some help. But you have the resources. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning of last offseason. You have the resources to fill the gaps you have, right? And that's a good thing. Not a lot of teams can say that. The Bears have been trying to say that for a long time. But hey, salute to the Bears. You guys made a good coaching hire. You'll probably figure out a way to screw it up. Good luck. But, shout out to some of our friends that are here in the chat. You guys are getting in there and getting ahead of us a little bit, so I don't want to ignore you. But Chris good evening, sir. Glad you're with us. Daryl, I see you in there with some of these draft prospects. We were actually hang out. We're going to get to some draft stuff at the end of the episode, and next week's going to be a good one. We got some Shrine Bowl stuff coming up we're going to cover, but we'll get to that. We're not there yet. But yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, I just want to jump in because you mentioned pass rush and like what they can improve next year. And I think pass rush is the number one thing on the defense, number one thing maybe on the entire team, but certainly on the defense. They are making steps, I think, not to celebrate anybody's firing, but they did make a change at defensive line. Coach Jason Rebovich was let go. So, again, I'm not celebrating that, but it makes a lot of sense because we just didn't see the improvement on the defensive line all season, really, from anyone. Maybe Brenton Cox, I guess you could say he certainly improved from his rookie year. But other than that, Kenny Clark had a bad year. Rashawn Gary was disappointing. Had some stretches where he was good, but overall, beyond expectations.
Fair to say all of them individually were disappointing.
We saw some flashes from Wyatt, but there was no Carl Brooks. I thought was better as a rookie. So it just wasn't good enough. So it makes sense to make a change there, and I was glad to see that they recognized the need to improve, and that they decided to change things up, and we'll see who they bring in. I know they already talked to or were planning to talk to the Jets defensive line coach. So that's one of the names that came out. I haven't seen anybody else come out as a candidate, but we'll see where it goes. I think that's a positive thing, and hopefully whoever they bring in can mesh better with Hafley and the scheme and get some of these, especially younger players, improved because they really, guys need to take a step next year. They need to add to the room. They need to add pass rushers, but obviously who they have they got to improve. There's a lot of talent there, but they obviously didn't get enough out of it this season. So maybe that can change with the coaching change.
Well, and that's something that I've harped on a lot is if you've seen players play great and then all of a sudden you see them not playing great, certainly sometimes injuries are cause of that. Sometimes it's age, although Kenny Clark's probably the only one you could even suspect that of at this point. And even he is not old. No. He's been in the league for a while, which is fine. That doesn't make him old. So, once you've seen these players play well and then you see them not playing well, coaching is definitely the first place to look, and I think even Goody kind of alluded to that, right? That's what happens, right? You've got talent, you need talent to perform, and the coaching definitely comes up and you've got to hold them accountable. So I think this is what you're seeing, right? You're seeing, we've seen Kenny Clark be one of the best in the league. You saw a great start out of Carl Brooks. They really like what they saw out of Devontae Wyatt. Goody was pretty specific about that. LVN's got some incredible tools. His name's Hercules, for crying out loud. If you can't get Hercules to win some pass rush reps, you might be coaching him wrong. But all of these guys, you can go down the line and see these are Rashawn Gary. All of them have played very, very well at some point. So if you're not getting that right now, you're doing something wrong. You got to figure out how to get that best out of them again. So that's what I would be, looking at too. So it's good to see that they're already in that problem-solving mode. I really am encouraged there. The question comes up: just how close are the Packers after the 2024 season? Which I think is a good way to look at. Not how close were they in 2024? That gets all speculative and hypothetical, and it's weird, and we just round and round we go. But after that season, and again, it's easy when the loss is fresh to be really upset, say burn it down, blow it up, start over. We got to have this guy and that guy, sign T. Higgins, get Max Crosby, all of it, right? We just got to have everybody if we ever have a chance of ever winning a game ever again. Now that we've seen teams play again in the divisional round, and you've seen, some weakness out there, maybe from some perceived strength in Detroit. You've seen some of these teams lose. You've seen some of these teams win that you didn't think could. And, that's where I think the answer to that question for the Packers is they're pretty dang close. you're not looking at this going, gosh, I don't know if that quarterback can get it done. Sure, yeah, he didn't play great this season. We can get into why and all of that. I don't think that he gave you any indication he's not the guy. I mean, he didn't play terrible. What was it like 25 and touchdowns and 11 interceptions, something like that?
No, and some of his advanced stats were really good. I still think he's the guy, but obviously he has to improve, and a lot of things around him have to improve. It's not just him.
Oh, for sure.
But my confidence is that you can see that he can improve. Like he hasn't hit his ceiling, and I mean, we're seeing quarterbacks in their division where they have a ceiling, and we just saw it with Sam Darnold and Jared Goff. Like they have a ceiling, and you know what it is, and it's gonna be hard for those teams to overcome that. So yeah, there's a lot of room for growth with Jordan Love. It was his second year as a starter, and I still think that people got to understand that it doesn't happen overnight. And even for where he is 2 years in, he's probably ahead of where most players are 2 years in as a starting quarterback. It takes guys some time.
Yeah, Stroud didn't have a good season.
No, and everybody this time last year, everybody's talking about how great he was. He was a top 5 quarterback and all this. And
basically the way they're talking about Jaden Daniels now.
Right, and he came in the second year, and Stroud wasn't very good this year. I know they won a playoff game and all, and give them credit. I mean, they won it with their defense, but give him credit. But he didn't have a good year this year, right? And it took Josh Allen several years. And I mean, Josh Allen's great. And I'm not saying Jordan Love's going to be Josh Allen, but I mean, some of these guys, it takes them time. Not everybody's Patrick Mahomes, right? So yeah, how close are the Packers? I think they're really close in their division. As far as a Super Bowl contender, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because we don't know what the 2025 version of the Packers is going to be or what these other teams are going to be. But where they are, there's nobody that scares me in the NFC. There's teams that might be good, might sustain what they're doing this year. Look at Washington with Jaden Daniels, and they're kind of a newer team, a fresher team. They made a lot of changes there with their GM and the head coach, and obviously now they have a quarterback. But you got to see that could be. This could be as far as they ever get with Jaden Daniels. You never know, right? You don't know how it's going to go. So I'm not scared of them. And as far as the division goes, there's going to be a lot of change with the teams that are ahead of them in the division this year, right? We're already seeing it. The Lions lost Ben Johnson. They very well might lose their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. Jared Goff, he's had some really good regular seasons, right? But there's still a ceiling with him, and for them,
Lions still are the Lions. And listen, let's do a little bit of an aside here for this. Okay, there's some great Lions fans out there, and for you Lions fans that are respectable people, I would have loved to see you get to win a Super Bowl with your team. To the other dummies out there, you are still a poverty franchise. So stop it. Stop it with all the chatter. You have done nothing. You have not even sniffed a Super Bowl, much less won one. So this poverty franchise thing that they just love throwing around, you got to stop. You got to stop it. I can't handle this anymore.
They got real arrogant real fast for
way too quick.
Two seasons that were good, and they lose them both in heartbreak and disaster.
Which means you are still who you have always been.
Right.
That's the thing. It's you guys got to sit down. Chill out.
And you see what Goff, I mean, as good as he can be in a regular season, there's still going to be these games where he's going to throw you interceptions like that. And it's maybe things fall into place and they can overcome it, or they get the right matchups and yada, yada, yada. But, he's still he still has that in him, and it's never going to leave him. So I don't think the Packers are far off in their division. And that's where I start with, I think they can be right there again next year at the top of the division.
If you win your division, you are a Super Bowl contender.
Well,
you just are. I mean, you win your division. I mean, look, you've got a shot.
Houston won their division. Tampa won their division.
You got a shot to get to that game. If you win your division, you got a shot to get to the game. I would not have called the Rams a Super Bowl contender before this playoff series, but they got damn close to the NFC Championship game there. That's a Super Bowl contender.
Sure. But my point is just I don't think they're far off at all in their division. And I know we're all disappointed, in how the season went. And we can, and we talked about it last week. We talked about it throughout the season, like of all the negatives and the things that they need to improve on. And I'm not losing sight of that, but they're not that far off. Like take a step back and see some of these teams that just got eliminated in the playoffs, or even the teams that are playing, like you're not that far away. They're not one player away or even two players, but
no.
They're not far
you
off.
may not be any players away. I think you're more maturation and coaching away than you are players away.
If Jordan Love and the passing offense, not just Jordan Love, but the receivers, the play caller, if that kind of stuff comes together, that can take you so much. That can take you so far. Your offense and your passing game can take you so far. And that's not even talking about like what they can improve on defense, from a defense that improved a lot from 2023.
And will it, assuming Halfley doesn't go coach the Jets, for crying out loud, assuming Halfley sticks around, you should almost certainly take another step forward. It doesn't have to be a massive step forward. But if they were the 6th defense in the league this year, they should be top 5 next year. You should be 4 or better. And I don't believe they're losing anybody that they don't want to lose. So you got draft picks, you've got cap and free agency. They'll get who they want. That's kind of how I feel when it comes to the players. And you're going to get to add draft picks to positions that don't need them. So that's great. You're going to increase competition there. You're going to increase depth there. What positions those will be, we'll have a whole offseason to contemplate about. But yeah, I think that as far as players away, you're not a T. Higgins away. And I think that Goody really put that out. I mean, we get into every conversation, right? So check that box. He's in the conversation. Now, is he going to go spend $30 million a year on a guy that he doesn't believe moves the needle for a Super Bowl? And he didn't say that about T. Higgins specifically, but he just basically said these guys that have outsized targets, it doesn't go well. They don't go deep into the playoffs. I think that was what his words were. They don't go very far in the playoffs or something like that. If you're going to pay somebody $30 million a year, the point is to get you deeper into the playoffs. But if I'm not giving you an outsized share of targets, why are you worth $30 million a year?
Yes.
That's where it comes around. It's like, you got to have a balance to this thing. You can't just say, you got to go get T. Higgins or you're not trying.
No,
it just doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. It's not fantasy football, as Ted Thompson used to say. And they do have the cap.
It is somewhere between fantasy football and where Ted Thompson lived. We could
right. But they do have the money to go out there and add somebody that they want to add, and that's awesome. That's what they had last year, and that's why they were able to get Jacobs and McKinney. So I expect them to be active.
And they made great decisions with those two.
Right. I don't think they're going to go out there and sign 10 guys, but they may go out there and sign 1 or 2 that are, higher price points at their position. But it's not going to be a receiver. Like,
no.
T. Higgins is going to get $25 million. They're not paying T. Higgins that kind of money. They're just not. Not when they have a receiver room with all these guys on their rookie contracts who they're going to have to make decisions about really quickly. And they have a history of not going out and getting outside receivers. They're going to probably draft one in the 2nd round or 3rd round. Count on that. Maybe if there happens to be a veteran that becomes available that they like, that they could get in their ballpark, a decent size contract, short-term deal, maybe they do that. But no, forget about it. But yeah, they're going to be able to improve their team. They're going to be able to target free agents that they want at positions of need, or just, whatever guys they want to go after, and be able to go after. Maybe they don't end up with them, who knows, but they have the ability to, go out and add impact players through free agency.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've done well with that, right? Even back in 2019, you should say what you want. There's criticism for some of those players, but they were good free agent signings. They didn't waste that money. Preston Smith was an excellent pickup, but Amos gave you a couple good seasons. Turner gave you a couple good seasons. Obviously, we were the first on the merry-go-round of the train that is Zadarius Smith. So
Yeah, what a front runner he is. He made he had one sack against the Packers, was the first snap of that game.
Gosh, that guy
And
is
then he didn't make
weird.
another play the rest of the year for the Lions.
He's just like, he's got little spurts of motivation, and then that's it.
And then he shuts it down.
Can't do it.
It is unbelievable how he quits and is invisible.
When he was on, though, man, he was fun
he
to
had
watch
a great
2019, 2020, man. He was really fun.
I don't know what happened to that player, but yeah, he was. He was one of my favorite players for those 2 years.
For a moment, yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they've done pretty well with their free agents. Like, you can't really be mad about their free agents. So I trust whoever they go after, and I trust that they will go after a few. I think the cornerback position will be interesting to see how they handle it. I still do not believe that there is any kind of rift between Alexander and the front office. I do believe Alexander will be here next season. Goody already said they can afford him. Financials are not an issue. He said there's no disconnect between the team and the player. I just think that this is a made-up media thing. And when the guy's healthy, he's one of the best in the league. Now, you need work at the position. Is there room to bring in a veteran cornerback and scoot Stokes out of here? Because I think we can all make peace with that. Or is it CV time? And you just maybe add like a whatever draft pick you can. I mean, they might actually have a good shot at a first-round corner in this draft, and it certainly wouldn't be beyond them to do that. But do you roll the dice on CV and Alexander? Now, I know you don't think 2-3 is here next season, so we'll just set that aside. But with the other role, you get rid of Stokes, probably. CV's right there. Or do you have to go find another veteran in free agency?
Well, we'll agree to disagree on Jair, because I don't think he's back. I'd be shocked if he's back. But I don't think – whether he's back or not, you're adding at the position. You're drafting a couple corners, probably. Sure. As far as a veteran goes, like, all right, in your scenario, if Jair's back, maybe add a veteran still. If there's one that you really like, I think it could go either way if Jair's back, because they could look at it and be like, well, we're going to draft one or two. We have Nixon, we have Valentine, Bullard can play the slot. We got Jair. Maybe they just go draft. But if he's not back, then I think you add a veteran and you draft two guys and you go with Valentine and Nixon and Bullard, and that's kind of your mix, and you figure out who your starters are and where exactly they're playing from there. But if they're going to commit to Jair for another year, they very well might just focus on the draft with corner.
All right, let's see who these free agent cornerbacks are here. I think DJ Reed's the top of the list.
DJ Reed's one, yeah.
Certainly within their budget. If they're so I'm looking at PFF here. PFF's projecting something around a $16 million a year contract for him. I think that's something the Packers would take on. So,
well, certainly if you move on from Jair, yeah. I mean, you're not going to pay both of those guys that kind of money. But
no. I think if you've got Jair, that's your guy. That's who you're paying. You don't need to pay somebody else. So I think at that point, you add a draft pick.
Yeah,
maybe a high one, but Charvarius Ward is out there. He's projected around the $14.5 million a year mark. Rasul Douglas, obviously a familiar face. There have been no rumors about that. That seems strange.
Yeah, he's getting
people wouldn't even at least speculate.
I don't see it. I think he's getting up there. And if you watch Buffalo, he gets beat a little bit. I'm not saying he's not still, he can still make some plays. He's, serviceable, but he's not as good as when he was in Green Bay. Let's just say.
Okay. And then Carlton Davis. Now that's one coming from the Lions. I wonder if the Lions actually let him get out there. He's 28, though. He's a little bit higher on the age scale of things. I know that they'll probably look for more value with the age and try to find somebody younger like they did with McKinney. Asante Samuel Jr. is an interesting one. He's still only 25. did not have a good 2024 season, but was also hurt, it looks like.
Yeah, I think he was hurt.
And before that, 22, 23, he's been a pretty good corner, top 30 corner, top 25 corner. That wouldn't be a bad one to add. He's still around that 14.5 mil a year mark, it looks like, based on PFF. This is not end all be all, obviously.
Right.
Just kind of giving some frame of reference here. Byron Murphy Jr. is one that's out there. His projected contract is higher for some reason. He's around the 17 mil a year mark. 27 years old. Doesn't look any more impressive than Asante Samuel Jr. So I'm not sure what those projections are. PFF's just making stuff up at this point.
And the other thing you got to be like, there's going to be guys that are going to get cut for salary reasons, from new GM or a new coach comes in, they want to make moves, system change, whatever it may be. So there's going to be more guys available than right now. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people like DJ Reed from the Jets, and Charvarius Ward's a good player. He had an unfortunate family situation this year. It caused him to miss some time. It looks like he's probably going to move on from the 49ers, but he's a good player too. He's got good size and plays in a scheme that's similar to what the Packers play. So those two guys would make a lot of sense. And they, DJ Reed, they probably I don't know how much they're talking to Saleh about guys he used to coach, but that's Saleh worked for them for a little while as a consultant, and he's buddies with LaFleur. If they bring in his defensive line coach, he could have a lot of information on DJ Reed too.
But what you could say about that is they either know or they don't, right? Like they either want this guy or they know they don't want him.
Right. Right. You know what he is behind the scenes.
Now, Charvarius Ward, like you said, good player. 2024 cut short with some issues. Not a good season before that and the snaps that he did have. But in 23 and 22, he was a top 10 corner based on PFS rankings, which, again, not end all be all, but that means he's pretty good.
Yeah, he was a good player.
He would be one that I think would be very interesting. Another one that Saleh, I believe, was coaching. Was he there for Saleh? Was Saleh there in 22?
22 he wasn't. I'm trying to remember when he got the Jets job, but no, 22.
No, I think he got the Jets job, so he would not have overlapped. But
yeah, and I believe Ward played for the Chiefs before the Niners too.
Okay,
if I remember. But yeah, so I don't think Saleh would have had carryover with him there.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, so that's a guy that I think, based on having a tough season in 2024, you might get a little bit of a value out of signing him. But yeah, there's definitely some options out there. Character comes into play with this front office. I don't know much about these guys' character. I don't think they're bad guys. I haven't heard anything about them. But yeah, so those are some interesting names, but there are definitely going to be some names in this draft to keep an eye on for the Packers. And we can segue a little bit with that. It's draft season. So if y'all were with us last year, we had some fun. We got into some in-depth analysis on different position groups, and we really tried to focus on who we thought the Packers would be most interested in, have most of a fit for. So we ignored some of the bigger names, some things, just guys that may not be there, may not be a need for the Packers, may not be that type of player that the Packers would look at, stuff like that. So we're going to get to go a little bit further in depth in analysis this year, get a little bit more hands-on. So the Shrine Bowl starts, the practices start this next weekend on Saturday, and I will be there on site. Credentialed reporter, get to see all the practices and be on the sideline for the game. So I'll get a little bit of a close-up observation of some of these guys that'll be coming through and be potential draft picks for the Packers. There's definitely some names on this roster to keep an eye on for the Packers that would be a fit, would be available in the range that the Packers will be drafting in, stuff like that. So come back next week, see what's going on. We're going to have kind of we're going to be middle of the action at that point. We will have next week's episode. We won't change anything. So let's see, at that point, I will have gotten to see 3 practices, and we'll have the game coming up. But yeah, so we'll get to get into that. I'll get some video and stuff that will be, I don't know, we'll probably share it here on the YouTube channel. I'm also going to update some daily summaries for Cheesehead TV. So you guys, if you're familiar with Cheesehead TV, keep an eye out for me there. We'll have some updates for those guys over there on what's going on at the Shrine Bowl. And, there will be a few Packers coaches there. No promises that we'll be able to get some time with them, but I'm definitely going to try and hopefully have a lot of fun stuff to come back with for you guys. And then from here out, like I said, it's draft season. We got the Senior Bowl just 2 days after the Shrine Bowl. So there's going to be a whole lot of information coming at us real fast in the next couple of weeks about these draft prospects. I saw the chat lighten up a little bit about some of these guys. But there are some fun names to think about in this draft that will be available in the Packers range. And there's going to be a lot to talk about this offseason. Tim, I know up in your neck of the woods, some of those Penn State guys, man, looking pretty good. And I know that some Packers fans would be mighty excited if we got at least one of those guys. So any opening thoughts on draft season here?
No, I'm just excited that, you're going to be boots on the ground down there at the Shrine Bowl. That's awesome. And the access, and it's notable because the Packers have their assistant offensive line coaches down there coaching, and Zach Tom, John Runyon Jr. were two recent draft picks of the Packers that played down there in the Shrine Bowl. So yeah, it's an important event. And really, draft season seems like it never stops anymore, but now it's really going to start ramping up. Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl and then the Combine and everything. So yeah, we're going to be here for all of it, covering it all and discussing it all. But it's really awesome experience for you to be able to be there and be in person and see it. And can't wait to hear your report next week on everything going on down there.
Heck yeah. No, I'm very excited to get the up close view of some of these guys and, see what we're looking at. But yeah, I mean, to your point, this is an important event to the Packers specifically, right? They draft guys out of the Shrine Bowl. They draft guys out of the Senior Bowl as well. That's going to be another one we get into immediately after the Shrine Bowl. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff to talk about and think about as the Packers get closer to hosting the draft in 2025 here in just a few months. So a lot of fun stuff to talk about. This 2024 football season went by in the flash. It really does feel like it was just getting started. And now it's over, but we are going to have a fun off season. We're going to be here every Monday night with y'all at 9:30 p.m. Central, streaming live, talking Pack. So, sometimes there's stuff to talk about. We got free agent signings, we got draft, we got scouting combine, we got all sorts of stuff. And then before you know it, there's like 1 or 2 weeks that we got to fill time before training camp starts, So it happens fast and furious, and it'll be the 2025 season will be upon us before we know it. We certainly thank y'all for hanging out with us this week on the Pack Weekly Podcast. And every week we thank you subscribers. If y'all want to help us out, please spike that like button for us. Head on over to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell next to it for bonus points. All that stuff is tremendously helpful for us, and we greatly appreciate it. We love it when you guys come and hang out with us every week, and we will see y'all next week. Packers fans, go Pack!